Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
The father of personal development, Jim Rohn, said it best. You are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. And so I've created a mastermind community called the Lion's Den around this idea that if you are surrounded by high-performing people and you have consistent education and training, then you will succeed in life and as a man. Check out kfmlion.com to learn how the Lion's Den can take your life, relationships, and business to the next level. Again, that's kfmlion.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Dr. Roger Washington, a Stanford Medical School graduate and Academy of Family Physicians fellow. Dr. Washington has spent 30 years decoding the connection between stress, lack of sufficient sleep, and the single most common cause of illness. He's also the author of the book, Sleep Matters. All right, Dr. Washington, happy to have you here on the show.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, well, we start off every show with a success quote, or maybe even a saying. It could be from your book or just something that's helped you on your journey in your life. So share with us what you got and explain to us what that means to you.
My success quote is something that inspired me when I was a young man. And it says, "You gravitate towards that which you secretly love most. You meet in life the exact reproduction of your own thoughts. There's no chance, coincidence, or accident in a world ruled by law and divine order. You rise as high as your dominant aspiration. You descend to the level of your lowest concept of yourself. Be careful of the thought seeds you plant in the garden of your mind, for seeds grow after their kind. Every thought felt as true or allowed to be accepted as true by your conscious mind takes roots in your subconscious, blossoms sooner or later into an act, and bears its own fruit. Good thoughts bring forth good fruit. Bullshit thoughts rot your meat. Think right and you can fly. The kingdom of heaven is within. Free your mind and your ass will follow."
I like it. And where's that by?
That's some verses from a song I memorized from George Clinton, who was in the 70s, was a doctor himself. He was the Dr. Funkenstein. And what he did was distilled, if you would, some wisdom that you find in places like the Bhagavad Gita that the Hindus read, and the metaphysical wisdom that's in the Christian Bible. And when I was a young man, I recall that Rudyard Kipling had a poem about if, and it was like a prescription for young men, young schoolboys in Britain to memorize and learn how to become a man, because it said, if you could do these things, then you'll be a man, my son. Is that ring any bells for you, that poem, If?
Yeah. Rudyard Kipling, it's like if you can keep your head when all about you and losing theirs and blaming on. Yeah.
And blaming you, that's right. And he says at the end, and then you'll be a man, my son. Well, I wasn't a British schoolboy, but from the place I grew up, the kind of difficulties I had, to hear the kind of words that George Clinton shared, it inspired me to dare to think that I could be great if I controlled my thoughts. They would produce my own destiny. I liked that idea. I was in a difficult situation and gave me the inspiration to do better.
Yeah, really good quotes. And for those who haven't heard of the poem, just simply go to Google and type "if," and then the author's last name is Kipling. I highly recommend it for all guys to read. So check that out. And thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Washington. I'm interested in how you got started with what you do. It seems like you're really advocating a lot about sleep and an expert on sleep, which I know we all love. I think we all love it, but I think we really don't know how powerful it really is. And I think we're doing a lot of things to neglect our sleep, which ultimately neglects our health and our productivity and performance.
Right. Well, now I'm a wellness doctor, and I started out actually like most doctors, focusing on illness. And when I graduated from Stanford Medical School, I had a very, very good education, and my passion was to help men scholarships in order to go to high school first of all, and then on to college, and then Stanford Medical School. And I recognized that I had an obligation to give back. My scholarships were the result of the philanthropic work of other people. And I recognized that when I accepted those scholarships, I had a tacit obligation to give back. And my goal was to go into primary care, actually family practice. And many of my mentors, my college professors, even my classmates, colleagues, they recommended that I not go into family practice. No prestige, no money, but my goal was to give back. And I thought it would put me in the best place to be able to help. And when I started off in practice, I actually practiced in the Silicon Valley of California, the high-tech region, very near Stanford. And
I was just there for the first time yesterday. I was in the San Jose, Mountain View,
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara. Yeah, I was actually there for an event, so I was driving all around. Even went out to Santa Cruz. But yeah, really nice area.
Yeah, so I'm in Santa Clara, the heart of the Silicon Valley, and when I was working with my patients in order to help them with their illness, it eventually became my passion to try to help them to stay well. And in order to do that, I had to talk to them about first of all, their behaviors. What were they doing? I had to talk to them about exercise and diet and stress. But after a while, I began to notice what I called a cycle of illness. My patients would get ill, they would recover, and then get ill again. So I started to talk to them about what attitudes and beliefs they had, what behaviors might be contributing to their becoming ill. And I noticed a very peculiar pattern that happened over and over. It turns out that my clients, my patients, are the can-do people of Silicon Valley. So when I would ask them about how they would respond to their different challenges, what they told me is that they would push themselves to get it done. And when they did, they noticed they got extra energy. And that was kind of the aha moment for me. Because what they were telling me is that they experienced more ability to get things done, more focused. They've become more confident and more creative. They feel like they had more energy. Well, I began to realize there's no such thing as extra energy, right? The first law of thermodynamics says there's no extra. E equals mc squared. You can change the way it looks, but there's no extra. So what would happen is they would get more focused and more confident, more of what I called accelerated. It's an acronym I came up to describe the different characteristics. But the peculiar thing was, when they finished their project, that's when they became sick. You know, we had this idea that stress causes illness, but then it became obvious they weren't getting sick when they were stressed. They were getting sick when the stress was over. So it implied that something else was going on. And I noticed over and over this pattern, this cycle of illness, of getting increased energy, more focused, more driven, more creative, more entrepreneurial. And then when the challenge was met, and they decided to relax and slow down, that's when they became ill.
Wow. And really interesting that you're in the Silicon Valley. So your patients are these high-performing individuals who are really pushing themselves to get things done. And I think there's a lot of people like that listening to this podcast all around the country, just really pushing themselves, and are probably finding themselves in a similar position like some of your patients here.
Right, I would think so. You know, it turns out that the accelerated experience I was describing, it's this acronym. Your listeners may find interesting, I talk about it in my book. The A stands for that they feel like their minds become more active. And the C, they feel more confident and creative. And the E is for more energy. The L stands for the idea that they need less of what the body usually needs to be healthy. So they might work right through lunch because they need less food. And even feel like they can get by with less sleep. They might stay up late and get few hours of sleep, but still function at a very high level. It's almost like they were resistant to stress. The second E stands for entrepreneurial, because they become more interested and more able to put together resources in a novel way to bring about some sort of new activity. And the A stands for more articulate, because that's when they can explain the things that they want to get across to people. The R, I skipped, stands for Randy. That's a British term. I needed a word to say that felt more stimulated or more interested in sexual kinds of things, because that's when people notice that they feel more interested in telling a joke that you can take both ways. The T stands for more titanic or strong. And the last E stands for entertaining and enthusiastic, because these are the alpha people that step up and they feel more charismatic and they can get people to follow them because they're such good leaders in a group or leaders in a company or leaders of their own family. And the D stands for more determined. All these are the characteristics of the people when they push themselves to get things done. And rather than feeling stressed, they feel this way. So it's almost that this is their response to stress, to allow themselves to get things done. But when they finish and they realize that they have accomplished what they intended and they allow themselves to slow down, that's when they would get sick. They would become what I call crashed and burned. And when I would see patients in the office and I would ask them about this energy, one of the things I would say to them is, what do you call it when you get this extra energy? And I don't know if you can relate to it, Andrew, but some of them would tell me that they called it their soldier mode, or they called it grinding.
Yeah, beast mode.
beast mode, there you go. Some people called it just getting it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a single mom tell me, well, doctor, it's called being a single mom. I have no choice. And I could relate, but the idea was that they put their mind to it, and then something happened where they would get this extra energy. And I would say to them, so this extra energy, where do you think it comes from? And people would say things like, well, it comes from motivation and desire and willpower. I would agree, and those are good terms for it. But then I would ask, so do you think the energy is free? And everyone would say no. No, everyone intuitively knows there's no free. You have to pay for it in some sort of way. And so that was the metaphor I used to help people understand that when they have this extra energy, they're actually doing what I call energy borrowing. And they're borrowing it away from their immune system. But as long as they stay in beast mode, as you put it, they're going to get it done, because that's how they roll. But when it's over, that's when they become sick and they crash and burn. And all kinds of illnesses we've seen with it. And in my book, I describe many. And one of the most interesting is what they call blue death. Have you heard of any of your listeners or any of your guests ever talk about blue death?
No, this is new.
Well, blue death is what firemen and policemen who wear the blue uniforms, they call the situation that when they retire in their 60s, they don't live very long, right? So now most people would say, well, it's because of the stress. Well, once again, if it really was the stress, why does it wait until the stress is over? You would think that in the middle of the stress, they would see problems. And furthermore, if you go to a fireman or a policeman and you say, are you stressed? And they look at you like, what are you talking about? This is what we do. 24-hour shifts, back-to-backs, that's nothing. And right, my premise is that the people who sign up for this kind of work, who can't hack it, so to speak, who don't have a beast mode, who can't become accelerated, they wash out. They don't keep that job. They end up working some other kind of 9 to 5 where you're not pressed as much because they're not alphas. They can't step up. They don't have that can-do ability. But it's not without its costs. And many, many people find that they've seen situations in their own life where when they slow down, they become ill. And there's lots of examples. I include some in my book. And even we have a so-called poster boy. Bill Clinton is the poster boy of my concept that you have to balance activity with sleep. Otherwise, you become ill and you run a debt. Because Bill Clinton, as you probably remember, only needed 4 hours of sleep. And he put his mind to it. When he was a young man and he was going to Oxford, he's reported to have said, "When I'm the president," right? Not like most people would say, "If I'm the president." No, his mindset was, "When I'm the president." And he became one of the youngest governors and one of the youngest presidents. And he did 2 terms of presidency, right? And then he wrote a big book, and then he went on a tour to support his book. And he had the best doctors on the planet. But after the Democratic National Campaign in July, that was the culmination of his political career. And then, so I'm supposing that that's when he slowed down, because within weeks, he required quadruple bypass surgery and had complications. And he had the best doctors on the planet. But they didn't see it coming, because this concept that I have, that illness comes as a result of too little sleep, is new. And it's not yet taken traction. But the idea is that there are many examples, and I try to illustrate it when I talk to people, and I thank you for this platform.
Yeah. And while you're sharing that example, I was also, because you're from the Silicon Valley, or you're there now, I was thinking of Steve Jobs. I've read his book, and obviously the new movie's coming out, so I've been paying attention to that. And what led to, I don't, obviously you weren't his doctor, but he was the grinder, absolutely the grinder. I can't imagine him, getting, 10 hours of sleep a day. Like, he was in full grind mode. And I just was drawing some comparisons there.
Right, I see the same kind of comparisons. I see a lot of CEOs and a lot of people who are grinders, as you put it, and they're very successful in terms of getting things done and their entrepreneurial spirit. These are the alpha charismatic people that start with a vision and then have the leadership qualities and the energy to make it happen. But on the other hand, I often wonder, at what cost to their families? Because the people that are the night owls, they get this second wind experience. I don't know, are you familiar with that? Do you hear people talking about it? That they get a second wind at night and then feel more like they're more awake?
Yeah. They can be more productive at night sometimes. They start really getting a lot of things done at 10 o'clock.
Right. I can talk more about that, but before I do, let me remind you that the next day, though, these same people are more what I call crashed and burned. They're not at their full bandwidth. If you think of bandwidth as the ability to take in a lot of information, to work with it, to then figure out an efficient answer and deal with it with alacrity and come up with a very good product. Well, afternoon, when they have that food coma, if you brought them some difficult problem, they wouldn't be nearly as sharp, right? So the idea is that very often these night owls, the next morning, they require coffee and sugar, which you would have to think of as a drug that kind of speeds them up. So they're having to offset this crashed and burned feeling the next day. And they're a little irritable and a little moody. And after lunch, they can be difficult to work with, right? And then if they come home in the afternoon after work, instead of having the energy to interact with their kids in a enriching kind of way that's meaningful for their lives, they feel like they have to sit down in front of the television and maybe watch sports because they have to decompress because they don't have the energy. And then a little later, they start to feel tired and they feel like, all day long I've been doing stuff for other people and I've been pushing myself to get stuff done. I need some me time. I don't know if you've heard that characterization, but I have my patients talking about it all the time. I want some me time. And so rather than succumb to going to sleep when they first feel tired, they push through it and they get this second wind and they feel more energetic and they feel more of the accelerated kind of experience. In fact, the way I describe it is that night owls, whatever they love, when they get the second wind, they love it more. They become more passionate. They become more interested in their entrepreneurial ideas. That's when the people who are artistic, that's when they create. And the people who love books, that's when they read. And the mothers who who love their families and want to have something nice for them, that's when they have the energy and the motivation to put the house in good order so that the next day their families will be happy. And people find that that's when they have their energy, but they don't realize that the next day they're going to be more in a crashed mode. And I'm not really sure if it's a good trade. Now, some people can keep pushing themselves, and every problem comes up, they push themselves. But I'm suggesting that it's energy borrowing away from their immune systems, and they're going to pay with their health. So that night owl experience, although people say it's natural, no, I don't know that it's natural. I think it's an emergency mode that some people, especially alphas, have the ability to utilize when they put their willpower to it. Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, I'm getting that. And so the single most common cause of illness, is it lack of sleep or is it pushing through these hurdles and not giving themselves a break?
Actually, Andrew, it's both, and I'm glad you asked it that way. A parent, intuitively knows that if her child has a big day and goes to the pool and goes swimming and all kinds of amusement park activities, that day, the child intuitively gets tired earlier, and the mother allows them to get sleep in order to maintain a balance of health. In other words, when there is more activity, be it mental or physical, in order to stay healthy, there needs to be more sleep. I call it the Washington sleep loss principle is that activity, mental or physical, needs to be balanced by sleep. And if it's not, and you get more activity and less sleep, you run what we call a sleep debt. Mm-hmm. And you're borrowing from your immune system to keep going. And then once you slow down, you're going to become ill. So the idea is that by borrowing away from our immune systems, we're caught and not sleeping sufficiently to pay back, we're setting ourselves up for illness later in life. So when you ask, is it not sleeping enough or is it the pushing through? It's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
In fact, I put it in mathematical terms. I don't know if you can envision it, but illness is proportional to the activity over sleep. So it's directly proportional to activity and inversely proportional to sleep. And like in any ratio, the denominator drives it. So if sleep is less, regardless of the situation, it's going to cause more problems with energy borrowing and illness eventually. Okay. And I think it's an idea that may take traction. It may take a while before people catch on, but when they look at their own lives and when they became ill, very often we find that in the week before, they were putting out more pushing through, as you called it, activity, mental and physical, and sleeping less.
Yeah. I was listening to a TED Talk by Arianna Huffington, and she said the key to success is to sleep your way to success. She said sleep your way to the top, because she said your competitors or your counters or your peers are not sleeping. And if you would just sleep more, you're going to be more productive. You're going to be more sharp. You're going to be healthier. You're going to have more energy. And she said that is your competitive edge.
Well, I think she's onto something. There's some science based to that idea. And the easy way of looking at it is that if you don't sleep enough, your bandwidth the next day is diminished. When you sleep fully, when you paid back all your sleep debt, your bandwidth is at a very high level. In other words, think about what it would be like to operate all day long at top bandwidth for maybe 16 hours and then shut it down for 8, as opposed to having 3 hours of very, very high bandwidth and the next day feeling somewhat diminished, or what we call crashed and burned. I think Ariana Huffington is onto something that way. I think it's better to have full bandwidth. It's just that it's hard to describe for people.
Yeah. And so when you say, leads to illnesses later, you're talking about more serious complications, like not just like, the cold or like a fever, but you're talking about serious health complications further down the line.
Right. Things that lead to death, things that lead to illness. I think that there's going to be a paradigm shift very soon among physicians and then among people, or it may go the other way. It may be the people decide first that how important sleep is, and the doctors catch on later, because unfortunately, if there's anybody who are good at energy borrowing, it's doctors. So the idea is that when eventually I think people will get the idea that illnesses are, but any illness that you can think of that might be related to infection, for example, is more likely the result of energy borrowing than it is the germs. People like the idea of germs, but one of the things I point out to people when I have the opportunity to talk to them is that when you go to the bank, people aren't washing their hands after they touch the money. And when you go to a restaurant, I don't know that there's somebody who's diligently washing the salt shaker before you get there. Right. And I don't see people when I go to a restaurant lined up at the restroom to wash their hands before they eat. And when you go to a buffet and everybody is touching the same spoons in order to put food onto their plates, and yet we're not having an epidemic. No, I think it takes more than just germs to allow people to become sick. And you see it over and over, that there are examples that you have to decrease your immune system by borrowing energy away from your sleep. That allows you to become ill. So illnesses like flu and colds, and even illnesses like salmonella and diseases that people get when they travel, very much related to germs. There has to be a lowering of the immune system. And then there's the issues like kidney stones, for example, and gallbladder stones. If you ask the doctor, how long has that stone been there? Well, they tell you it's been there for weeks or months or maybe even years. Well, then you ask the person, well, why did I get a kidney stone pain on Monday if I've had it all these years? But if you ask the people about it, and you ask them my sick question, the week before you got the kidney stone pain, were you doing more? You doing a project perhaps that required more activity, mental and physical, and maybe were sleeping less? And then on that Sunday perhaps you slowed down because you finished your project and you turned it in on Monday, and then you noticed the kidney stones? Then you have your answer. And there's rheumatological diseases like gout. And they say that people with gout is because they eat rich foods or drink a lot of alcohol. But on the other hand, every time that person eats rich food and drinks alcohol, they don't get gout, right? And so it's like a moving target to try to figure out. If it was easy, somebody would have figured it out before me. But the idea is that stress plays a part, but it's the way you respond to the stress that matters. Do you sleep less? If you're around the germs, if you have a genetic predisposition, you're likely to see it when you slow down.
Yeah. And so how much sleep do we need? How much sleep is good sleep?
Yeah. People enjoy talking about sleep. We all have a personal experience of it, and people want the quick answer. They want a number, and if it were that easy, you'd already know the answer. But it's more intuitive. Remember, I talked about the young person who does more. They need more sleep. So the idea is it depends on what's going on in your life. But I would say the fast answer for an adult is to be healthy. If your question is, how much do you need to be healthy? I would say 8 hours of good quality, deep sleep that causes you to have the HGH releasing episodes. I'd say 8 hours minimum. And if you do more, you'll need more.
The more that you put out, the more that you need to put back in. So just
Right.
like eating, like we know that when we go for a long run, we're going to come back. We're going to be more hungry than if we didn't do that run.
And you know that if you exercise, you did a 2 a day, you know that evening you tend to get tired early,
Right.
right? Another peculiar phenomena that I've noticed and I talk to my clients about is that when you get on a treadmill to do exercise, you see that maybe after a half an hour, it says what? How many calories would you think you burned? Maybe 300, 400? And you think, that's not even a half a cookie,
Right.
right? So how is that going to add up? Well, then I ask people to think about someone that in their entire life, think about someone who has dieted and exercised, lost weight, and then kept it off for a substantial period of time. And most people can't think of very many. And then I ask, if you and I, Andrew, for example, we're on the committee and we're going to design a human being that needs to be able to adapt and survive to their situation. And let's say they're 40 years old and they catch their food 90% of the time. They're successful. Let's say food gets scarce and they got to run around more and eat less. Wouldn't it be a good idea if their metabolism could slow down so they could survive longer with less food?
Right.
Right. So it suggests that dieting and exercise would cause your metabolism to slow down. And do we ever see in life where people diet and exercise, they start to lose a bit of weight and then it plateaus?
Right. Yeah.
That happens all the time, right? So it would suggest that dieting and exercise alone, why would that work? You'd think the body would fight that. And if you look at life, you look at people, that's what seems to happen. And if you think about it from a survival standpoint, it makes sense that it should happen. In other words, when you sleep less and you diet and exercise, you're not likely to lose weight. I'm suggesting that 30 minutes you spend on the treadmill burning the 350, 400 calories, I'm suggesting it makes you sleep deeper. I'm suggesting that's what makes you lose weight if you do. I'm suggesting that deep sleep is doing the heavy lifting and exercise is getting most of the credit. I'm suggesting that people exercise, put in their 20, 30 minutes a day, but then listen to your body that evening. And if you notice you get sleepy early, what would be more natural than going to sleep and getting that deep HGH releasing, life-giving sleep and letting your body do the most natural thing it can do? I mean, if you were doing exercise and you needed to take a bigger breath, you would, right? You'd take more air if you needed it.
Right.
You should take more sleep as well.
So what's the science behind sleep? Like what's happening when we're in that deep sleep? How is it repairing or helping our bodies?
Okay. Well, the way I describe it is that there's two kinds of sleep. There's problem-solving sleep. That's where you have dreams and figure things out. And then there's the deep sleep during which the brain secretes what's called human growth hormone. And that human growth hormone in children allows them to grow. In adults, we don't need to grow, but we need to make repair. And the idea is that most of the deep sleep we get in the early evening. And the idea is that it's the most important sleep. That's why we do it first. In other words, the body knows that if there's critical maintenance to be done, it should do that first. That's why if you've ever been around children, when they first fall asleep, you could carry them out from the car to their bed, and you could turn them upside down and put their pajamas on them. They're out. That's when we'd ordinarily be the most vulnerable. That's when we go to deep sleep. That's when HGH is released. Unfortunately, when you feel tired in the evening, if you push through it, as we suggested, and get that second wind, that form of insomnia that is in emergency mode, the body decides to get just the minimum of the HGH sleep and go to the problem-solving sleep, the sleep where you're more alert and you can be easily awakened during the night. So the problem is that the HGH sleep is forfeited by those people who tend to stay up in the evening. And I have a lot of engineers who, they can do the math. They tell me, well, doctor, how about if I just stay up till 1 o'clock and then I get 8 hours of sleep and get up at 9 o'clock? Unfortunately, that doesn't work because we're what they call diurnal creatures. Our body clocks are based on the sun and what the sun is doing. And we can't really undo that because we invented a clock. So by not getting the deep quality HGH sleep, we tend to forfeit the rejuvenating aspects of the HGH sleep. And my colleagues, many of my sleep medicine colleagues, say that it's normal for people as they get older to get less HGH sleep and to get less sleep in general. I would say it's common. I wouldn't want to confuse what a lot of people do with what's healthy or normal. I would say if you want to find out what's healthy and normal, go to the healthiest older people you can find, the people who are in their 80s and 90s, and find out about their sleep. And I think that when you study those people, you find people who follow the old wisdom of going to bed early and getting up early. So I hope that helps to answer some of your question about what sleep does and why we need to get the HGH deep sleep.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it helps us explain more about the science behind sleep. Well, now that we're all convinced that sleep is absolutely necessary and we need to get more of it when we're really exerting our bodies,
right? What
kind of routines do you give your patients so that they can get more sleep? Like, what kind of healthy routines can they do during that evening to help them get that sleep? Because sometimes we are going to bed at a decent hour, but we're not actually falling asleep. We're spending a lot of time tossing and turning.
Andrew, remind me what a decent hour is.
I would say whatever's, like, if you've got to wake up at, 7 o'clock, then I would just subtract 8 hours from that. So whatever it takes for someone to get 8 hours.
Yeah, I don't think that works. I don't think that works at all. What I would tell people, and what I do tell people all the time, is, as I suggested early on when we started, you gravitate that towards which you secretly love most. And if you love sleep and you honor sleep, then it's more likely that you'll be a good sleeper. If you, on the other hand, your purpose is to get more done, then you're probably going to have issues with your sleeping. What I tend to do is I try to get my patients to look at their lives and see how their behaviors and their attitudes are interfering with their sleep. Because remember, that's what comes first. Your attitudes and your beliefs. And if you're in love, so to speak, with getting more done in the evening and staying up till 10 o'clock, you may very well have pushed through and gotten a second wind, at which point it's going to be very difficult for you to get good sleep that night. And a decent hour, we're defining it now based on what's convenient for us, now that we've invented lights and clocks and alarms. But the human body was designed by nature thousands of years ago, and changing that primordial kind of program can be very difficult. I ask people to try to get in line with their own body's biological rhythm by learning to appreciate their sleep, by learning to look at how their activities may be interfering and their beliefs may be interfering. I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, it's not something I thought about, like really looking at your attitude and belief towards sleep. Like, do you want sleep or do you really want to be doing more work? And I think often the case is even for me, like I sometimes just want to do more work, or I bring my work into my bed.
I would caution against that. What I do is I tell people that if you love sleep, when sleep comes knocking on your door and you start to feel a little tired, you should welcome sleep, right? If it was your fiance came knocking on your door, you wouldn't say, baby, can you come back in about 90 minutes? I got a little work I want to do. No, I don't think so. I think you'd open the door with welcome arms. You'd embrace sleep, and go to sleep. And then if you have things that you want to do them in the morning. If you're going to cheat some sleep, never cheat that sleep before midnight. Never cheat your life-giving, HGH releasing sleep. Cheat that morning sleep, that problem-solving sleep. The man told us many, many years ago, he had a formula. It was a very good formula. Early to bed, early to rise. Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. The wise part is the difficult part.
Yeah.
The health just follows through. But listening to your body, that's what I would try to get patients to realize. Start paying attention to your body.
Yeah. Yep, you're right. You brought up a good point with, like, we have lights, we have kind of a schedule that we have created in society, where a decent hour to go to sleep, and we kind of create what works for us instead of what our body actually needs.
There's one other exercise that I try to take people through in order to get them to appreciate sleep.
Okay.
And have a better relationship with it. We're talking about a relationship here. So let me ask you a question, or a series. Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you were doing something you enjoyed with your family, or maybe you were in a convertible, or maybe you're near the beach where the air seemed a little different, or you get out of your car and look at the vista point and see the horizon? You ever had a situation where suddenly you felt wide awake and alert, and you noticed what was going on around you, and you were taking it in. And maybe you said to yourself, this is a good moment. Do you know that feeling?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a word for it?
Bliss.
Bliss. Okay. Well, as it turns out, when I talk to my patients about it, people come up with different words. It's such an important feeling. You'd think we had a word that everybody would be able to agree about. But actually, there is a very apt word, but unfortunately it's been hidden from us. In Greek, hyper means too much. And hypo is what's underneath. It turns out what's in between is called EU. EU. So the expected, not too much, not too little, the expected, the ordinary, is called eu. Euphoria actually means normal feeling. In other words, that feeling that you get when you take a look at the world and you realize, life is good. Your brain is saying, boss, life has been good. Life hasn't changed. Life is the same way it was a minute ago and 5 minutes ago. The only thing that's changed, boss, is you and your perspective. And now you have euphoria. You have the feeling of happiness brought about by the absence of suffering. Unfortunately, in the dictionaries, the psychiatrists, the illness doctors, have made euphoria into some sort of inappropriate, elated feeling out of proportion to the circumstances. No, euphoria is that feeling that you just called bliss. So when I ask my patients, I say, so how often do you get it? And I had a guy tell me, oh, doc, I get that all the time. I get that once a year. I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I said, well, wait a minute. That feeling is not circumstantial. That feeling is our God-given right to have. And what I try to tell people is that when you don't have sleep debt and you sleep sufficiently every night, it's the cornerstone of being able to have that feeling every day, to be able to have that feeling. And I think that's a worthwhile reason to develop a better relationship with sleep. Because most people, when they have that feeling, I don't know, Andrew, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but most people, when they have that feeling, they have a sense of, well, my life hasn't been perfect. I don't have all the money in the world, but my life brought me to this moment, and this moment is good. So I'm okay with my life. And the idea is that that feeling is priceless. And if more sleep can do it for you, as I'm promising, it's something worthwhile looking into. What do you think?
Absolutely. Something I've actively been working on. I love when I can get a full night of sleep, when I can wake up naturally and feel like I've gotten all the sleep that I needed. and I wake up just ready to go. There's no caffeine needed. I'm already excited for the day when I have that much sleep. So, I mean, I think for a lot of the listeners too, they feel in a similar situation where they're working really hard and they have these goals. And so much of this show is about, achieving your goals and being successful and becoming the man that you want to be. And I think sleep is often neglected. And I think a lot of figures who are successful say, don't get sleep. Like I know I gave one example of Arianna Huffington being a positive example, but there are many others who are icons who actively say just like don't sleep as a part of their success philosophy.
Right. The people who say, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Right.
But Andrew, although they're success icons, do we know how they got along with their families? Do we know what kind of relationships they had with the important people in their lives? Do we know that they had full bandwidth for their children? Do we know that, or do we just know how successful they are, what their public persona? I'm trying to get people to have a better relationship with sleep so that they can have a better relationship with spirit, with other people, to have full bandwidth. What I'm suggesting is that in order to do the kinds of things that we men want to do, to provide for our families, their spiritual health, their economic growth, we have to have full bandwidth. And I'm saying that in order to be there for them, to be present, it's important to have sufficient sleep and to have a good relationship with sleep. And that's why in my book, I pointed out to people that they can look and ask themselves what kind of relationship they have with sleep, or what kind of relationship they have with the accelerated experience, to see if they're caught in this cycle of crashed and burned, where they feel a little bit negative and a little bit irritable and a little bit restrained, a little bit depressed. Because most of the people I find that are depressed, they've also, before that period, they had an experience with activated. What goes up must come down.
Good. This is really powerful, and I'm already thinking about how I'm going to accelerate my sleep and really understanding its impact on the rest of my life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
I'm your man if you need some help.
Yeah, thank you. So your book, for the listeners who want to follow up, is Sleep Matters.
Right. It's called Lack of Sufficient Sleep Matters.
Okay, and they can get that right on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, they can go on Amazon. In fact, I have a free chapter that describes the accelerated experience in more detail that people can download if they go to sleepmattersthebook.com. And they can find us, of course, on Amazon. And my book just describes how it is that lack of sufficient sleep relates to disease and causes problems.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. And thank you so much for sharing this message here with my audience. I think it's something so underrated but so powerful that we all need is my take on that. And this message has really hit me home, and I'm like already thinking about how I'm going to have a good night's sleep tonight.
That's how it starts. It starts with a vision, doesn't it, Andrew?
Yeah. So they can follow up at sleepmattersthebook.com. And just curious, like what's exciting you today now? Like what's really getting you out of bed in the morning now?
Oh, Andrew, I've been working on this for many years. You know, most people that write a book, they stay up at night. Well, obviously, I'm not going to do that. So it's taken me a long time to put together this piece of literature that I can be proud of. And now I'm having the opportunity to get my work out to the public. And I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it is to have someone be interested in what I have to say, rather than when I have to nail people down to listen to me about sleep so they can be more healthy. So having this opportunity to get my message out is my passion in life. You know, knowing what your purpose is, I don't know of anything that's more fulfilling. Between this and my children, I'm set.
I really like that. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Washington, for being on the show and sharing this message here with my community. It's really been an honor.
Anytime. It's been my honor as well. Thank you. I wanted to say, Andrew, that I've looked at several of your podcasts now since I was introduced to the idea, and I want to thank you that you have taken on this project. It starts with a vision, and you've decided to lead and for us to have a forum for men to actualize themselves and figure out what it is to be a man is a tremendous opportunity. I've introduced my son to it, who's coming of age, and I want to thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.